Okay, the first Mishnah we're learning is page 47. Rabbi Shimon, if anybody doesn't have a book, there's extra books on the table here. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Al Shlosha Dvarim Haolam Omed, on three things the world stands. Anyone want to read this for me? The English.
On justice, on truth, and on peace, as it says. Execute the judgment of truth and peace in your case.
Yep. So we have three things the world stands, or it seems to be exists upon. These three things lead the world to exist. They are truth, justice, and peace. Okay, we learned a Mishnah like this, similar to this.
Okay.
The Mishnah that we saw earlier was Mishnah chapter 1, Mishnah 2, which says, this is on page 15, it says, on three things the world stands, on the Torah, the Avoda, and the Gimilu Chasadim. Okay, so all the commentators kind of talk about this. How do you connect these two Mishnahs? One says, our Mishnah says, on these three the world exists, seems to be Kayam, according to many versions. And some say, and chapter 1, Mishnah 2 says the world stands. And there's different things that that are mentioned. Actually, on the laptop, I have them laid out really nicely, but unfortunately, none of you can see that. At home, you can. So some cars correlate these. Torah is truth. Torah is judgment. Avoda is truth, meaning service is truth. And Gemilu Chasadim is shalom. That works out somewhat nicely. Like in order to have the Torah, you need all the laws, the judgments, proper judgments. In order to have service, it has to be really from your heart. And in order to do good things, you have to have peace. Okay, that works out nicely. What?
Said that there's two different versions of this, one is Omed and one is Kayam.
Yeah, the Omed, the Kayam. So our Mishnah, that's gonna thank you. Good segue. Our Mishnah says these are the world things upon the world exist, not stands. The first Mishnah in chapter 1, Mishnah 2 seems to be saying these are like the this is like the essence. These are like if you have a chair and it has three legs, you take out one leg, it'll be more difficult for it to stand properly. So these are the three things on the world really stands, and that's spirituality, Torah, service of God, which is prayer or temple service, and you have kindnesses. The next one is like, how do you make that happen in reality? Well, you have to have proper court systems, you have proper judgment, you have to have implement truth, and you have to have peace between people. That's like how you do it in reality. So I think that's like how it stands versus how it exists. The exist is like the perpetual existence of reality. So that's Mishnah chapter 1, Mishnah 18. So you take many factors into consideration when you're judging that. You're using din. You have to take in the fact that what are their abilities? What are their skills? How much did they study? How much have they prepared? I take all those factors into account, and then you also take in the fact of what they've done, what they presented. So you have the truth, like this is what they're supposed to do. Then you mix it, hopefully, at some point with some shalom, with peace. You're able to get to a proper combination. So really, you need judgment, you need peace, and you need truth for things to work in society. And so I think that's why, you can take if you have proper judgment, you can elevate peace and truth and make them work. It happens in all areas. I don't know what's in your realm. And as a doctor, you can come and you're speaking to a family or something you want to go tell them some diagnosis, right? So you could just say black and white. This is what you could say. This is their diagnosis, or that's just emet. That's truth. But when you come to speak to a family, you know that you want to promote peaceful relations. You want to, take into consideration their feelings. So you mix in there shalom, and you're using your judgment to do that. And so really for society to exist, you really need these components. I don't know, like in your work, Sherry, like with let's say like as a programming director here, you need to combine those components. You're emailing a family in capital letters, come here to the event. But everybody knows you're a nice person, and they know that they can come there, every generation, and as they come through, they know you knew their children, they feel safe and comfortable with you. So you're using your judgment. You can't go too far with truth because that can turn people off. But if you're only with shalom, with peace, you're not going to get people to come to your program. So it's really like these three are what lead the world to exist in a way. So it's like, I think from this Mishnah, you can see the negative sides of it, but the positive sides really is when you bring judgment into it, you figure out how to combine them. That's how you can bring like bracha into the world.
I think that, like, just in general, people have to find balance. I think that's the way that God gave us to find balance. Because it can't be all one way or the other.
You need to combine these three. The interesting thing is I don't view them as like on the same axis. I view it something like judgment, and then judgment is the arbitrator trying to like, or trying to make sure that these peace and truth are like working together in tandem. Because the verse even says that, it says execute the judgment of truth and peace in your gates. So you need the judgment of these two things. So
You have to temper truth with judgment.
it happens all the time.
I
It happens
think-
all the
I
time.
think
Like,
that sort of the blunt side or the blunt side of truth is this sort of absent characteristic of chesed. Because in each situation, you have, like, for instance, okay, in medicine, yes, there's a diagnosis, but also you never want to take away hope, right? So that's like that's like the kind aspect of judgment. That's like the
so it's
judgment is like a sharp blade or like a
So,
knife, and then
So I'm reading like this, judgment is like your judgment. That's how I'm reading this, which should take into consideration truth and peace. So
right,
you're kind of saying the same thing, just using different words.
I guess, right, but I'm trying to reintroduce that it's the individual's judgment that how much chesed you really need to put into the presentation.
Yeah.
Similarly, like dealing with like a family or whatever, like it might be really important, or somebody who needs to attend a program or what have you, or you're dealing with a vendor or whatever, and it's like you really want them to do what you want them to do, but you've got to go about it in a diplomatic way. Like you
Yeah.
can't just say, oh, well, I need this done by X, Y, and Z. Right? I mean, when
No,
you're
you have
talking to somebody,
you
you're
have to
like,
negotiate.
really,
But no more
It's-
than when you give someone, you need to give someone new, you're talking about, or, you know, for me, I started thinking about people and you have to be healthy and you tell them the things they have to do to be healthy, and it may not really be the lifestyle they've been living. So you can't tell them, change your life.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't work. You have to negotiate with
Yeah.
them. You ha-
So that's like the negotiation, I view that as the judgment. And then I view like the figuring out how to portion how much shalom, how much peace, or how much truth. It's in the home and everything. I mean, it's just like in everything. You need to really use these in order for things to exist in the right way. You need to like figure out how to work between these two traits, truth and shalom. Interesting. Yeah. So I think that's one way to read that Mishnah. This Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said, "What is the straight path that a person should choose for themselves?" Okay, what's the straight path? One which is an honor to the person adopting it and accrues honor to them from others. Okay, so very simply, what does that mean? Any of the new students here can. This is going against what the Mishnah says. The Mishnah says you should care about the honors of others. Simply honor the person adopting, and accrues honor to, meaning you can do an act that brings you honor, but it insults others. So it's like really making sure your actions. I have this all the time as a rabbi. Like before I became a rabbi, I could do certain things that I can't do as a rabbi. Like I don't know. Like this one time I was in the bank, and somebody was like actually not acting properly, and I had this urge to like tell them that they weren't acting properly. And I think before I was like a communal person, I might have said something, but I realized I shouldn't do that. And I didn't. And it turns out like I see that same person like a little bit later, driving into the BT parking lot, heading into BT.
Huh.
They were coming, they're like, I don't think they're a visitor or a congregant or whatever. So I'm really happy I didn't do that. But really, we should be thinking like that all the time. Like we have certain actions that bring us honor, but we should also like be thinking about how about having our name, like having a good name, having a good reputation among those around us. Last week, so that's kind of what it says here. Something that brings you honor, but it also accrues honor to others. We should be thinking about our reputation. You think about how people see us. Last week's parsha says, "Vayetze Yaakov." Yaakov left his home, and many say, like, why? I talked about this in shul, but why? Why does it say he left? We know he left. It already said that he escaped Esau. So some say because when he left, you felt he left. When Yaakov left home, you felt like he left home. There are two different ways you could feel when people leave. When they leave, thank God they finally left. Oh, they're driving me crazy, right? Or they left and you're missed, and people are talking about you, they're thinking about you, and you have a good reputation. And so it's really important to maintain both of these, like to worry about what's good for you, to also worry about to have a good reputation. Like when you leave, that people feel like they feel you're lacking, and because you left a mark, you made an impression. And so that's what the Rashi says there, that Yaakov asa rosh tzaddik makes a roshem, makes like an impact. And so that's kind of like I think what the Mishnah is opening up saying, like when you should be thinking about your honor and thinking about how your honor is accrued from others. Okay, that's the first piece of the Mishnah. The second piece of the Mishnah says, "Be careful with a light commandment as with a grave one, for you do not know the reward for the fulfillment of the commandments." Okay, so be careful with this with a light commandment as a strict one or like a serious one. So what does this mean? A light commandment versus exactly. We don't. That you got to the point of the Mishnah. Meaning like you don't know. So I'll give you so there's different ways to understand this. One way to understand is like there's easy mitzvahs and there's hard mitzvahs. Okay, an easy so there's a mitzvah that gets the same reward, same exact reward for two mitzvahs that are very different. You have a mitzvah of respecting your parents that gives you long life, and you have the mitzvah of sending away the mother bird. That mitzvah is if you come across a mother bird who's hovering over its eggs and you want to take the eggs, you have to send away the mother bird first. Some say it's so the mother bird doesn't have to see you taking its eggs. So it's to educate us to be sensitive. I mean, you're eating its eggs, whatever, but you're sending it away nevertheless. Okay. So that gives you long life also, the Torah says. Which one's easier? Which one's harder? What do you think?
The eggs.
Easier. It's very so yeah, the mother bird is in a second. You just send away a mother bird. Respecting your parents is like every day, it's all the time. It's not easy, right? So for both of them, you get long life. And so the idea is like one's easier, one's harder, but you don't know really like what reward is in store for what commandments. Some could be easier, some could be harder. Some could be understood as like, I definitely have to go to shul to hear shofar. There's no way I'm going to miss that, right? But then there's a mitzvah, I don't know, let's say Kriyat Shema. That's in the Torah. It's a daily mitzvah, and maybe some of us miss that. You know, who says that the shofar is on a higher level than the Shema? That's kind of what it's saying. Like it's hard to rate them and grade them. So yeah, it's Rob was gonna add, he had his hand up.
Respect your parents, show honor to them.
Oh, he said that's not the simple one.
No, it's not, but to many it is. It's still, doing the right thing with your parents. But for people that do all of that, and yet they don't have a long life, they've maybe been taken from life at an early age, how do you equate all that? Or
Yeah, so that's up for another class. That's like, why do bad things happen to good people? That's a huge question. That's like another class though. That's a great question. Truth is, there was a rabbi who, from this exact mitzvah, became a heretic. He was walking by it was someone whose father, I think it was his father, told him to go up to the tree and send away the mother bird. He did that. He respected his father. He went up to the tree, sent off the mother bird. He fell off and he died. And some say that Elisha ben Avuya, Acher, became a heretic when he saw that. So he had the same question as you. Hopefully you won't have the same response. Okay. But yeah, Sherry.
Do things because they're the right thing, or you do things to get the result?
Great. So Awesome. So I think our Mishnah is split into three parts. Yeah, you're giving the segue to the, so awesome. So I think our Mishnah is split into three parts. I always like to see how the Mishnah connects, how the different pieces connect. So you can read our Mishnah like this. The first part was do the honorable thing. Do the honorable thing that brings you honor and that will bring honor to other people. Great. The next part of the Mishnah talks about like calculating mitzvot, like what reward you get, what punishment, meaning there's no problem in doing that. The highest level is to do things just for the right reasons. That's the highest level. Anybody who's raised kids knows that that doesn't always work. You say, oh, you should do the honorable thing. I don't care what the honorable thing is. You're going to be punished. Okay, I'll go do it. So the Mishnah goes in order, starts the honorable thing, that talks about reward and punishment, and then it's going to end finally with reward, like death, life and death. So that's like from a Jewish perspective, that's like the levels. Like we want to do things because it's honorable, it's the right thing. Do not think about what you get from it, how it could be helpful for you in your life. Reward and punishment doesn't always mean just like that God's going to reward you. It could be like if I come to shul, I'm going to feel good. I'm going to meet some nice people, and that'll be beneficial. That'll be good for my. That's a very valuable and valid thing. That would be level, like kind of like level 2. You're not doing it because like, God told you to do it, and you're doing it for different reasons that could be beneficial. It's perfectly fine. And if you can't do it for that reason, then remember that God's watching. Okay, so we don't want to start there. There was a movie I saw. It was just like it was like, I don't know, I have to remember that movie. Anyway, so I'm forgetting the movie. So yeah. Anyway, yeah. So we don't want to start from fire and brimstone. We want to start from doing things because it's the right thing. And if it ends up there, so sometimes it ends up there, but that's how I read the Mishnah. So let's read the different parts of the Mishnah. Again, what is the straight path that a person should take for themselves? The first, the straight path is that you should do things with honorable. Afterwards, you go, be careful with the light commandment as with a grave one. You do not know the reward for the fulfillment of the commandments. Okay, it's very interesting. It says you don't know matan scharan shemitzvot. Okay, I really like. I found this wonderful commentary. I think I saw this in Rabbi Berewine, or maybe in Ethics of Sinai. This is beautiful. He says, you don't distinguish between mitzvot because they're all of great high value. Why? Because matan scharan, you don't know, matan literally means the giving. Scharan is like a price. You don't know the price that was given for each of these mitzvot by the previous generation. So it's not that you don't know the reward for mitzvot. Be careful with the serious one or a light one. Why? Because you don't know matan schar, you don't know what's given, what price was paid by the previous generation for you to be here to have the Torah and mitzvot. And so here's the language. You can also denote what you would have to give and pay to acquire the privilege of performing the mitzvah. Many things which you have without effort are not fully appreciated. We are born Jews. The mitzvot are here for our taking and doing. However, we do not value them properly because we are unaware of the price they have cost in the blood, sweat, and tears of history. We rarely think of the 20 generations that angered the Lord before the advent of Torah. How many of us consider the Torah mitzvot would have cost the Jewish people throughout our long and martyr-filled history? Be heedful of all the mitzvot, for you have no idea what they cost us. Blood was spilled, lives were given, that our people should not abandon or forget our commandments from Sinai. Our ancestors worked really hard to uphold the Torah, to make sure that we still have it, to make sure that all the details were kept, all that stuff. They wanted to give us something special, God's gift. And so don't be careful, not just with the big ones, but also be careful with the small ones, have a daily routine in Judaism because we really can't really comprehend the price that was paid by the previous generation for us to be able to have this gift, this present of mitzvot. So that was a nice commentary. So let's do the other part of this middle part. So it says also reckon the loss that may be sustained through the fulfillment of commandment against the reward accruing thereby, and the gain that may be attained through committing of a transgression against the loss entailed thereby. This is still in level 2, reward and punishment. So this is basically saying like, what will I gain from this versus what will I lose? If I do a mitzvah, what will I gain? I'll gain tremendous things. If I don't, I'll lose out. I won't have that goodness, all right? So an example I like to bring is, I remember when I was living in Philadelphia, I used to walk all the time on Shabbos to synagogue. It was a long walk, like for me or whatever. My walk now is like 5 minutes, and I feel like that's long because I used to live like a minute away from the shul. Anyway, but I live like maybe like 50 minutes from shul, and I didn't always want to make that walk. It was kind of it was long. But when I did it and I tried my best to do it, when I came back home, I'd feel so elevated. I feel so good. And I feel like so happy. And so like that was like if you're thinking about this, like in terms of reward and part, like what is the loss that I'll have? I'll have a comfort of my house. I won't have to go out in the cold. But what is if I don't do the mitzvah? But if I do the mitzvah, what will I gain? I'll gain all that goodness. And so we should be thinking about like, what do we have to gain versus what we lose out from doing a mitzvah? Coming to shul, seeing the community, coming to Kiddush, being around other Jews. Those are things that are positive. So similarly, what do I gain? What's the with a transgression? What do I gain from a transgression against the loss by not benefiting from the transgression? Like, okay, this transgression could feel really good right now, but what do I lose in the long term? I've dulled my soul. I've removed myself from closeness to God. I don't know, like it could bring something very mundane. Like let's say you're working on a diet, or you're working on a workout regimen or something like that, and you're sinning against your program. And you're not, you did 2 days in a row, you're feeling amazing, you're like, oh, I'm fine, I just did 2 days, 3 days in a row, I could take a day or two off, and then you take 1 day, 2 day, and before you know it, you're like 2 weeks later, you're like, I really gotta get back to that workout regimen, right? So it's like if you take a break sometimes when you're working on what you're working, what's the reward of that, and what are you giving? The reward is I don't have to like trouble myself another day, but sometimes the price is very high. And so I think it's saying like, as there calculations we can make. So really, those calculations could be extremely helpful. If you're not on the level of just doing things because it's honorable and the right thing to do. We're not all there. These calculations can be very helpful. I mean, when I was in yeshiva, I think as I've gotten older, like I can learn more on my own. I'm more disciplined. I have more Torah in my head that makes the learning interesting. But when I was younger, like our rabbis literally bribed us to learn Torah. Like I remember I would go learn for a long time for like maybe like a half a year in the old city, just because they were serving like this really good like food late at night. But I also got to learn from the Rosh Yeshiva in the old city and learn Torah. And so like there's all these things that we do that can make like we do the calculations and that's fine. Calculations are fine. They're not the highest level. The highest level is just because it's the right thing. But I know your children, you raise your children and they do things based on calculations a lot of times, like, I don't want to get in trouble, or if I get an A, I'm going to get rewarded. But when they get older, hopefully they come to a place where they're like, that was the right thing to do. This is the right thing to do. So we're not always there. So the calculations are perfectly fine. And in the last stage after that, it says, so if none of that stuff works, this is how I'm reading it, then think about these three things. What are the three things? Know there is above you an eye that sees, an ear that hears, and all your deeds are written in a book. So, calculations, I should do this. It's going to be great for me. That doesn't work. No, God's watching you, and you should, fall into place. So we don't start there. We don't want to start there, but that can be helpful sometimes.
Isn't that as reinforcing the penalty for failure to do the action? You hear another saying, everything where you have to consider if I get this, what's my gain if I don't do it, blah, blah, blah. And this thing is telling you, well, guess what, you're gonna get caught.
Yeah, this one's saying, yeah, the end here is saying that. So the language here is very interesting. So I had a commentary on this. That's a way to understand this, like in a kind of a scary way. Like everything's been written down. God's watching. But if you read this text here, da mala mala mimcha, know what's above you. Another way to read this could be like this, and it's more of a positive read. Da ma lemala mimcha, know what is above you, right? It's referring to God. Know that God's above you. But why does it say da, that Hashem's above you? Know that God's above you. It says da, know, ma, what is above you? It should just say no, God is above you. So I think one way to read this is like, what can keep you from sin? It says via tabalide. No, think about these three things, and you're not going to come to sin. What are the three things? Know that there's a ma above you. Know that there's a what above you. Know that you don't know everything. You might have a what in your head, and you're asking a question, you have an answer, you have a what, ma, what is this? You're asking a question. And you may have an answer, but know that you don't know everything. Know that there's so much more ma's, so much what's above you. That's another way to read this. Know ma above you. And if you think like that, you know that you don't know everything, you can take comfort to know that Hashem has a plan for you. And so I think that's what a continuation you can read it like this. There's an eye watching you. There's an ear hearing you. Hashem, not that Hashem's scrutinizing you to judge you. It's a different reading. Hashem's watching everything. Hashem knows everything. Hashem knows what's best for you. Hashem hears that person who's doing that wrong thing to you. Hashem hears your pain. Hashem sees all these people who are obstructing your growth. Hashem sees everything and knows everything. So don't think that God only knows God knows a lot of what's beyond what you know. And if you know that, if you feel comforted that God's with you, God's taking care of you, that can protect you from sin. And that's the last piece here. The Chol Ma'asecha B'Sefer Nichtivim, all your works are written in a book. It's not that God's recording everything you did wrong. Another way to read it is that God's writing your book. God is the author of your book. God is in charge of your life. God's watching out after you. God knows many what's behind what you know. And God's watching, and God's seeing, and God's writing everything down. God has a beautiful book to write about you and a beautiful plan for you. And sometimes people can fall away from Judaism because they feel abandoned and don't feel close to Hashem. And I think this could be a flip way to read it. Like, it's not just that Hashem's sitting recording everything, but rather, this is another way to protect us from sin, is to remember that Hashem hears us, Hashem sees our pain. Hashem's writing everything down in a beautiful work for us. And Hashem knows much more than we do. God knows. These are many mas, many what's above us. I think it's another way to read it. Yeah.
There's a synagogue in Denver that I go to when I'm out there. And above the Avram, I forget how it's written in Hebrew, but I can,
Can you guys hear Robert, by the way, at home?
and it says.
Oh, good.
Before you say.
That's this. That's from here.
Okay.
That's taken from here.
But that's the one, because I mean, it's like, if you're gonna daven, do it properly and do it with feeling and stuff, since you're here in front of, Hashem.
Dalif Nemia Talmud.
Yeah,
Oh, that's a different one.
yeah, I think
That's a different one. Yeah. Yeah, but it's also true. So those are a few ways, that's like a few ways to read this Mishnah. So to summarize what we've done so far, okay? The first Mishnah was about peace and truth, and the idea that you need your judgment. Those three allow things to exist. You need to really temper them together. This Mishnah seemed to be talking about doing things like for the right reason. Not always easy to do that, and it's perfectly fine if you're not there to do the calculations and like figure out like if it's in your best interest, if it's going to be good for you or bad for you. I wrote in this book later on about JFK. Anybody know what I'm referencing? Just for Kiddush, not John F. Kennedy. There's different people. Rabbi Wahlberg, people who come just for Kiddush to shul. Yeah,
I don't think I
what?
don't think they should get any mitzvah points for that.
So-
I've many times gone out the back way from shul and see carriages coming in with kids. And I used to say, I can't believe that somebody would do that. But in your book, you say that, or the Rabbi Wahlberg says, I
Yeah.
can't remember, that
Yeah.
you get mitzvah points for just coming to shul.
Yeah, so that's not doing things on level 1. Doing
That's
things
right.
on level 2, maybe low level, whatever. But that's getting someone into the shul. That's getting people connected to other Jewish people. So they done that calculation, like what will I gain versus what I'll gain being around Jews or getting some good children or whatever. Yeah.
There's a certain judgment there, because you don't know what it took that person to get there when they got there.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know whether they have a sick parent stay in their house, or they have 5 kids to get out of the house.
Yeah. Or they could have been watching, they could have watching Netflix. They could have watching Netflix at home or whatever. They could have. Yeah, so you really don't know. That was a mission we learned earlier.
Yeah.
You don't know, you don't know about things until you're in their place. So it's hard to judge. Yeah, yeah.
The Karl Bach Shul in New York, which I've been to a number of times, it's around the corner from.
Yeah, I've been there, yeah.
They only get maybe 30 or so people for services, men and women. And then they have a kiddush upstairs.
There comes a lot of people.
Kiddush gets probably over between, the people at the service and then who come from the neighborhood. And they put out an amazing spread of stuff. They probably get over 100 people there total.
Yeah.
That show up. And, they do it, I guess, for the community, and maybe many people, they need it and it helps them. But I mean, it's nice, and they're respectful. They wait. Nobody starts taking any food till the rabbi gets up there. And
Yeah, I mean, so there's levels upon levels of doing things. Like I'm for just creating more and more connection. People find their level that they need. It seems like the sages are saying here, we had an earlier Mishnah a long time ago, don't do things for the reward. Remember that? Don't be like servants who are serving their master for the reward. That was one approach. Here's a different approach. Start with the honorable thing. How is it going to be honorable for you and make yourself look good in the eyes of others? Not everyone's motivated in that way. I mean, the most honorable thing is to stand in front of Hashem and daven in shul. That's a very honorable thing. Not everybody's there. So like, it's very realistic. Like there's different factors we have to consider, like what's going to bring me in, how can I get myself in there? And that's fine for the Mishnah. And the Mishnah brings level 3, which is like, if nothing else works, try to get yourself motivated by knowing that God is watching you. God sees everything that's going on. I read this last line a little bit differently. But what can keep you away from sin? Knowing that there's Ma above you. There's a lot of questions you don't have answers to above you, that God knows a lot, and that God's really watching you. God's taking care of you, and God's with you. Maybe that can encourage you to kind of like come closer. Yeah.
That's sort of very interesting because, that's sort of, there are 2 ways of looking at that last line.
Yeah.
One is, the stringent school teacher is going to punish you for a reason, and the other one.
Yeah, I flipped it on its head a little bit there. I thought about this this week. It's a new interpretation.
Where did that interpretation come from? That's what we have to.
I came up with it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the interpretations in this book, I came up with a lot of interpretations. Usually the code word for that is a possible reading. That's the code word to know, like, I'm offering a new interpretation. All right, let's go on to another Mishnah. Chapter 2, Mishnah 2. This is page 51, right? I like this Mishnah. I think there's 3 teachings in this Mishnah. Let me just actually ask. How you doing at home? How's everyone doing at home?
Fine.
Good? Okay. Good. All right, we're going to do the next Mishnah. We're chapter 2, Mishnah 2. I'll project it on the screen for you. All right, this Mishnah, yeah. This is like a modern Orthodox would like this Mishnah, but there's also a lot more in this Mishnah, actually. Here it is. Rabban Gamliel, the son of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, said, "Excellent is the study of Torah when combined with a worldly occupation. For toil in both of them keeps sin out of one's mind." So it says, Yafeh Talmud Torah and Derech Eretz. What's Derech Eretz? Anybody know? What's Derech? What is the word Derech? Way. What
Path.
land? The ways of the land.
Yeah.
So it could be a very expansive. I brought many examples of how Rav Hirsch explains Derech Eretz here in the book on page 52. He says Derech Eretz includes everything that results from the fact that man's existence, mission, and social life is conducted on earth. Therefore, this term especially describes ways of earning a livelihood and maintaining the social order. It includes the customs and considerations of etiquette that the social order generates, as well as everything concerning humanistic and civil education. in another place, he says, justice, peace, art, science, culture, education. Rabbi Hirsch, Samson Raphael Hirsch, lived in the 19th century in Germany. He created a whole movement. This is one of his commentary on Pirkei Avot. He created a whole movement called Torah and Derech Eretz. We have to have Torah with the ways of the world. We can't just be secluded. We have to be involved in the world. We have to have proper etiquette. Clean up after ourselves. I don't know, like be nice, be kind, smile. All those things are part of Derech Eretz. Learn science, math, the sciences. Be engaged in the world. Torah in Derech Eretz, right? So here it says. So that's one way to understand Derech Eretz. There are many different ways, but here it says that if you do both of them, then it keeps sin out of your mind. So in the book, I explain that this way. Again, here there's three things. I'm going to explain all three of them. I'll connect them. But I'm just going into the first right now. First is Torah and Derech Eretz. How does that keep somebody away from sin? What do you think? Having Torah and Derech Eretz, how does that keep someone from sin? The way we explained it.
You're not idle.
You're not idle, so you're always busy, right? So when you can't learn Torah, you have things to do to keep you busy.
And hopefully learning, whatever it is learning, especially if you choose what you learn, that should be pleasurable, intellectually pleasurable, right?
Yeah, so what you're doing is, so you're
Doing something that is good in bettering yourself for sin, which is, again, also supposed to be, like, that's the drive for pleasure, right? So, but you're substituting intellectual satisfaction and hopefully also spiritual satisfaction for physical satisfaction.
And so how does that keep you from sin? Because you're having satisfaction
Right.
in many areas. I'm kind of going to read it that way. In the book, I kind of went this way. There are many people who can sit and learn Torah all day long. Actually, there's not many. There's actually, the Gemara says there aren't many. Many tried to do it and they didn't succeed. Right? How many of us are not, we're not inclined to study Torah all day long. We have things that we like to do outside of Torah. And that's fine. People are made differently. Everyone has to find their path towards spiritual growth and, the amounts that work for them. We should always strive to keep growing. But if somebody tells themselves that they're only going to learn all day and they don't take into account Derech Eretz, their engagement with the world, like let's say they're really inclined to studying science or literature, or I don't know, working in selling eyeglasses or whatever, right? Whatever you do, a teacher or a doctor, whatever. All these things are something that your individual's passionate about. If they withhold that from themselves, they may feel very stifled and very not comfortable in the framework of Judaism. So I think that could be what the Mishnah is saying. Like Torah and Derech Eretz, you need to combine them. You have to find which Derech Eretz works for you, which ways of the world work for you. But if you stifle yourself and say, I'm only doing Torah, and that doesn't fit for your personality, you might end up leaving Torah. Because you're going to see that you can't really manifest your abilities, your skills within the framework of Torah. That makes sense. Like, let's say somebody is very much into, they like business, and they're good at that, and they can't sit all day and learn Torah. And so if that individual just tell them, go learn Torah all day, they may fall into sin as a result of that because they're not being true to themselves. So this Mishnah could be saying, combine them. Find your combination that works. If that works, that'll enable you to stay a true, devoted Jew because you'll feel fulfilled within the framework of Judaism. So we have to find our own fulfillment within the framework of Judaism, how the combination works for us. So that's kind of, I think, what the first part of the Mishnah.
Yeah, I think also in reading it, there's kind of a premise here that by studying Torah, it's somewhat Socratic. You would know the good, and when you're working out in the world, you would do the good.
When you're studying.
Right, when you study Torah, you're learning what is right to do, you're learning what's good, and then you act according to those dictates. So you bring good into the world
so when
that
you
way.
combine them, you need to combine. That's fair. So that's more like Yeah, that's great. So you're saying they both feed off of each other and they help each other.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's also good commentary. Good explanation. And then they help you stay away from sin. Yeah. All right. So that's love. That's number one. Another thing is the kol Torah she'eni ma melacha sofa betela, the goreret avon. So any work, any Torah that doesn't have like a worldly occupation, not just like being involved in the world, but actually parnasa, like livelihood. If you don't have a livelihood, proper livelihood, it'll lead you really, you lose all your Torah and you'll get drawn into sin because you'll be able to support yourself. So far we have ways of the world. It can include a lot of things, Kornaf Hirsch. We have work. And the last thing is being involved in the community. These are all, I think combines all of these. These are all like additions to Torah learning or additions to the spiritual life. Like all these things, they fit into a Torah lifestyle. I think that's kind of what it's saying. Like you can fit in work, your parnasa. You can fit in being involved in the world, fit in your involvement in the community, being a communal leader. All of these things are positive things for a Jewish lifestyle. The last piece here I want to bring your attention to is, so I'll just read all three of them again. The last one is, and so it says, like, I'm reading number 2 now. Number 2 in English is but the study of the Torah, which is not combined with a worldly occupation, in the end comes to be neglected and becomes the cause of sin. Okay. And all who labor with the community should labor with them for the sake of heaven. For the merit of their forefathers sustains them, and their forefathers' righteousness endures forever. And as for you, God, in such cases say, I credit you with a rich reward, as if you yourselves had actually accomplished it all. We have to understand what these words say at the end here. But it's basically saying you should, when you're dealing with the community, this third level, all these things are like in addition to Torah, they kind of complement Torah, that aren't actually being in the Beit Midrash, right? You're leaving, you're going to work, you're going to be involved in the world, your etiquette, you're also going to be involved in the community. All of these things work with Torah, they have to come from Torah and be connected. But this last piece talks about dealing with the community. It tells us how to deal with the community. It says, deal with them for the sake of heaven. So Rabbi Wein, who was, he's a Kolber rabbi for many years. He worked in communal work. He was like the head of kashrut at OU for a while. She speaks about why is it telling us when we're working with the community to do it for the sake of heaven? And he says, why? Because working with the community is hard. If you have expectations from the community and you're expecting something from them, you're expecting them to praise you, or you're expecting them to be always kind to you, you're not going to survive. You have to do it for the sake of heaven. Do it for the right reason. And that can help you survive. That can help you continue to do it because you know it's the right thing to do. People might not always recognize what you're doing. They may not always praise you. They may not always see the benefit of what you're doing. If you're doing it for the right reasons, that can push you through, enable you to have to maintain your service to the community for an extended period of time. If you get into communal work and you just want everybody to recognize everything you're doing, you'll notice after a while that you'll feel very empty, because it's impossible for you to achieve that as a communal worker. A lot of times it's thankless, it's hours where people don't know what you're doing, but that's the way, in order for you to do it for an extended period of time. That's kind of like the mindset. Yeah.
I guess I looked at it more that if you only do it like in a vacuum and it doesn't work in the community setting, then of what value?
Are you talking about like the first two?
Yeah.
I love that. So you're saying be involved with the world.
Right.
Be involved, have parnasa, but make sure that you just don't do it in your own world. So it's 1 and 2 have to feed into 3. It's not 3 separate things. That's great. That's pretty awesome. Yeah. Make sure it feeds and enhances the community. That's just for yourself. That's really great. So I want to read you Rabbi Wein's language. We'll go another like 5 minutes. Is that okay? You have to go ahead soon, but. My internet went off, didn't it?
Okay. We're
Yeah,
back.
Okay, you're back. Okay, cool. I want to read this Rabbi Wein. It's okay. So Rabbi Wein says like this. Working for the public's benefit can be maddeningly frustrating. Okay. One should therefore be steeled to the likelihood, good night, of significant disappointments in people and projects and of being misunderstood and unappreciated. Anybody want to get involved with communal work now? No. Such is the lot of those who work for the general good, and it seems that has always been so. Therefore, anyone who undertakes the difficult but imperative task of public office or service on behalf of the Jewish people should do so, l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven, for purely altruistic and heavenly motives. Then one will not be crushed by the negative reactions of others to one's valid and necessary attempts to improve and order the Jewish society, synagogue, or group that one undertakes to serve. All right, so that's why it's saying doing it for the sake of heaven. There's two more reflections on this. When Rabbi Posner took on the role as senior rabbi, in his speech that he gave at the, I guess what's called the installation, yeah, that word. He said something really beautiful. He says, we're not going to look over, I don't know where he got this line. You're not going to look to our right. We're not looking over our.
We're not moving the congregation.
So, yeah, or he could be, I'm not looking over my shoulder to the right. I'm not looking over my shoulder to the left. I'm looking upwards. And that's really doing things, serving the community for the sake of heaven also. It's not just that you're doing it and you're not going to be impacted. You should also do it with the right intentions in mind. People have a lot of, feedback, and you have to figure out which feedback is helpful and which feedback is coming from the right or the left or from whatever direction. Our heart should always be like towards heaven, trying to figure out what's the right thing. It's not always easy. A leader has to move things forward. It's not always easy because you're always going to have somebody who's, not happy with what you're doing. That's difficult. It says there, Mordechai, HaYehudi, everyone's Mordechai, they celebrate him on Purim, right? It says at the end of the Megillah, he was Ratzuri L'Rov Echav. He was appreciated by the majority of his people. Right? Even Mordechai, right? Moshe Rabbeinu, yeah, I don't know, everybody had their detractors. So if you get caught up in that, you're not leading properly. One more thought. It says here that it says, as for you, I will credit you with a rich reward as if you had actually accomplished it all. So sometimes when someone is involved in communal work and you're not taking care of your own things like that you want to do, sometimes you have this worry like, I'm losing out. Right? I'm losing out. Like, for instance, like as a rabbi, there's a stage where as a rabbi, you leave the yeshiva and you go work in the community. You're not learning all day long. You're learning as much as you can. But there's a certain sacrifice. You make sacrifices as a communal leader. You make sacrifices of time, makes a lot of sacrifices. And the mission is saying that if you get involved in communal work, God will reward you. God will look after you and God will help you as if you yourself had actually accomplished it all. I mean, the things you wanted to do, God will know that you wanted to do them, and God will give you somehow God will give you credit for them in some way, or meaning you're getting a lot of blessing and reward, and don't feel bad about what you're missing. It could be that God's going to reward you for it. Just know that you're not missing out because what you're doing is very valuable. And it could be that God's even going to give you credit as if you did the others as well. So,
A quick question. So for the most part,
Mark,
Did-
one moment, one comment here, and then we'll come back. Okay.
yeah, okay.
Not just if you couldn't accomplish the things that you wanted to accomplish, but the fact that God gives you credit for the accomplishments of people before you.
Yeah. You can read it that way. Yeah, I guess I even saw somebody say that.
Go ahead, you have another comment on.
No, that's good. Yeah. Yeah, Mark.
Quick question. So the reading of this, the who labor with the community, that's a distinct class of people. Right? That's the way.
I think
this
it's
should be
everybody
read.
everyone can be involved in certain ways. Not that, it doesn't have to be just rabbis, or
No, I
communal.
don't mean like teachers, rabbis, I mean, it's not the guy who owns dry cleaners. I mean,
Well, the guy who owns dry cleaners who's involved in leadership in the shul, yeah.
right, but not in his capacity as a dry cleaner. Because it's not working for this is a specific type of almost
I think we all
elite.
have our communities. I really do. Like his
Yeah.
might be his community at home with his family, We all have our
Okay.
community. You know, we're all leaders in some ways, you know, like
Okay,
or in charge of something. And so it's, I mean, as a parent also, it's like, yeah, it's very difficult to stay even keeled, like to do things for the right reasons and not get swayed to the right by a child on the right or child on the left or whatever. Stay even keeled and try to do things for the right reason. We all have our challenges.
okay. All right, thank you.
All right, everybody.